All right, stand by. 10 seconds to go.
Talent. Ready, camera.
And cue talent.
3, 2, 1.
Record.
Greetings and thanks so much for joining us. This is The Rundown, where we take a look at some of the big stories making headlines. I'm your host, John Phillips. Joining me here in studio is stand-up comic Stephen Cruiser, and right next to him is the PJTV contributor Michelle Fields. Today, we're going to be talking about the results from last night's midterm election. It was a big night for Republicans, as they will now own control of Congress for the rest of President Obama's term. Reaction now from the Rundown panel, and we begin with Mr. Cruiser.
Biggest winners from the midterm elections are Republican governors. They reclaimed the governor's mansion in a number of states. In Wisconsin, incumbent Scott Walker beat out Democrat Mary Burke to keep his seat in office. That would be his third victory speech in 4 years, by the way. His reelection is a big blow to Democrats and labor unions, which spent millions of dollars in the campaign to try and unseat him. Incumbent Michigan Governor Rick Snyder defeated challenger Mark Schauer. In Texas, voters tapped Attorney General Greg Abbott to be their next governor, and he defeated abortion Barbie Wendy Davis. In Arizona, my man Doug Ducey beat challenger Fred Duvall. That's the Cold Stone Creamery connection that we all wanted in the state house. And in Arkansas, Republicans reclaimed the governor's mansion as Asa Hutchinson defeated Mike Ross. And the biggies, of course, was we took three ultra-liberal states. We took Illinois, Maryland, and Massachusetts last night, too. And the governorships were supposed to be where we weren't going to do so well last night, where the Republicans weren't going to do well. It was expected that, you know, maybe Brownback would lose, maybe this, and it started to not look. And as recently as yesterday, when the enthusiasm was gaining for everything else, they were saying, yeah, but still the governors, maybe not. This biggest thing here, John, I think, is the bench it gives the Republicans going forward, because we've got state houses and state legislatures now to start developing a serious bench for 2016, 2020, and beyond.
That's right, and this is where you go after the unions, who I believe are the biggest problem in domestic politics in this country. They've bankrupted our cities, they've bankrupted our states, and the Democrats, there's really no separation between the unions and the Democrats. The Republicans are the only ones who can be honest brokers at that level. I'll look even farther into the future. Look at 2020 right now. Mm-hmm. Some of these guys that were elected for the first time are going to be governor in 2020 if they have 8 years in the office. Okay, that's when the next redistricting is going to happen. So Republicans winning big this time around are really going to see a payoff in the House of Representatives and state legislatures all the way into the future. This is a big win.
Does last night vault Scott Walker? Should it vault Scott Walker to the front of a lot of 2016?
Oh, of course. I think
now?
That's the big takeaway from the Scott Walker win. I think this is going to be him laying his groundwork now for 2016. You know, obviously there was a lot of talk about him running for president. He said not yet because he wanted to wait until this election. Well, now is the opportunity for him to run. Do you think he's going to start building his team for 2016?
I think he probably will. It's a purple state. It's a state that Republicans certainly want to win at the presidential level. He's been able to win it not once, not twice, but thrice, as Cruiser mentioned. And I think he's got a case to make.
And tying it in with what you said, if he's running at the national level and he's bleeding the national union coffers dry, because they will throw everything at him. They will try to drop a house on him. They will be.
Sure.
And if he can prevail and bankrupt them at the same time, I will be in my happy place.
You know what it's almost like? It's like when you get Ebola and they give you the serum, they pump it into your body.
It's exactly like
and
that.
And then you defeat the Ebola.
Yes.
Once the unions try to kill you, and you survive it, you have that serum now. It's like, it doesn't matter in politics what happens. It doesn't matter how nasty people get, because no one's nastier than the unions. And the fact that he's beat them, he has those battle scars. I mean, I'd rather have someone like that than a guy who's been in the Senate for 20 years as our nominee.
And he has the American public on the side. I don't think, if you look at polls, the American public does not like unions. They think that they're unnecessary, and they see them sort of as bullies and bad for America. So he has them on the side. He doesn't have the unions, but he has the American people. You know,
and Walker beat them handily. Snyder in Michigan was narrower, but he still beat them. I mean, and because he's been taking he's been taking their best shot too.
All right, Michelle, what do you have for us?
So Clinton support did not help Mark Pryor in Arkansas. That's where Mark Pryor lost his seat to Republican Tom Cotton. This marks the end of the Pryor family rule in Arkansas, which dates back to 1960. That's when Pryor's father was first elected to Congress before being a governor and senator. Pryor had tried to distance himself from President Obama and Democrats like Hillary Clinton, but that did not help. What do you think this means going into 2016? I mean, does this mean that Clinton isn't really that big of a name, that Americans don't care that much about Clinton?
I'll harken back to a conversation that we had on this program a couple of days ago. We were talking about Rand Paul saying that Republicans have a problem with black voters. And I said, I think it's the opposite. I think Democrats have a problem with white voters. And we saw that last night. Michelle Nunn got, I think, 30% or just under 30% of the white vote. We saw the same thing happen in Arkansas. And the problem for Democrats is, how do they win an election, particularly in red states and purple states, when you don't have someone like President Obama at the top of the ticket to motivate minorities to come out and vote? And the problem that Pryor had in this cycle is that it wasn't a presidential election. He didn't have Barack Obama at the top of the ticket to motivate blacks to turn out and vote. And because of that, he went straight into the buzzsaw. How do Democrats win next time if you have a bland Joe Biden at the top of the ticket? Or even Hillary Clinton, who's looking a lot less like a transformative figure that would be the first woman president and something that would really excite people. And she looks more like a stale, old machine politician who's next in line. That's a big problem for them.
Yeah, it's Hillary. Well, there's the Hillary story, and then there's Hillary the person, and they're two different things. They're complete. Hillary, the powerful feminist, who's going to be the transformative politician. Then there's Hillary Clinton, who's an awful candidate, probably an awful human being.
But which ones will Americans see when she
well,
runs?
I think what they're seeing right now, the whole narrative for the Clinton camp coming out of this was supposed to be that Hillary will be the savior of the Democratic Party. She will come in and save them. She had a horrible track record last night. The people that she campaigned for, the ones that didn't want President Obama campaigning for them but had Hillary Clinton come in, didn't do that well last night. And if they can't twist it in Arkansas for an old family name in Arkansas with the most popular name in Arkansas politics, then her whole story about being this savior, this person who's going to swoop in and pick the Democrat Party up from the ashes here and do something with it just gets destroyed.
And part of the Clinton narrative is they win in places like Arkansas and Kentucky and Florida and maybe even Georgia. That didn't happen. No. Didn't come close to happening last night.
No.
All right, on to my biggest loser of the night. That is former Republican Governor Charlie Crist. This grifter failed to return to office as a Democrat in Florida. He conceded to Governor Rick Scott late Tuesday night. Scott and Crist spent more than $100 million on TV ads in one of the most expensive and nastiest races in the nation. And I have a special spot in my heart for hating Charlie Crist, because it's one thing if you switch parties and you're Jim Jeffords. Jim Jeffords was always a liberal Republican. He probably belonged in the Democratic Party a lot, long before he ever made the switch. I understand that. Phil Gramm was a very conservative Democrat.
Yes.
He probably belonged to the Republican Party a lot before he made the switch. So I understand that. Charlie Crist was a conservative Republican. He was a guy who got the endorsement of the Bushes, of the political apparatus in the state of Florida, and then became an independent when he lost a primary to Marco Rubio for the United States Senate and said, well, I'm very fiscally conservative, socially moderate. Then when he lost that election, he repudiated all of his previous positions, became a liberal hack machine Democrat, and ran for office in that skin. And then he lost. I am so happy that the voters in the state of Florida saw through this clown.
The Arlen Specterization of Charlie Crist, yeah, that's exact. I mean, he's now a trivia answer too. He's the only one to have lost as a Republican, Independent, and Democrat. I want him to become a Libertarian just so he can lose there too. Maybe go screw up another Virginia race. He can be the new Robert Sarvis or something.
I think he thought that he had this. I mean, he really pushed to have the marijuana legalization on the ballot in Florida, because they thought that, well, this is going to bring out a lot of voters who are typically not the voters in midterm elections, and that they would vote for Charlie Crist. Well, that didn't happen.
And Rick Scott's not the most overwhelmingly charismatic candidate. I mean, this was basically Skeletor versus Lizard Man, and this was a comic book race, and Skeletor won, thank God. But yeah, Rick Scott didn't do himself any favors. His little fan incident was ridiculous, and Charlie Crist is smooth. That's how he keeps talking his way into new parties. He can be. This was much closer than it needed to be. That's the problem with this, is that Crist can be so transparently awful, and it still be as close as it was.
Rick Scott is the luckiest guy in politics. He is an awful candidate. He's a mediocre governor at best. and he's won statewide elections in Florida, not once but twice.
And that debate with the whole fan situation, you
awful.
would think that that would just kill any chance he had,
Yeah.
but I guess not.
And
People
everybody
hate
knows
Chris
about
that much.
Charlie Crist's fan, too. That was not a new thing. Everybody knew that that fan travels with him. That little Vornado goes everywhere with him.
Where does that con man go from here?
He's going to be probably one of the richest lobbyists in the United States.
I think he runs
can
for
go work-
office again. I think he tries to be mayor of Miami or something.
He's going to be a less successful Jerry Brown. He's going to try to keep hitting everything, but I don't think he'll have the success. If he goes that route, I don't think he'll have Jerry Brown's success.
I don't think he'll be a lobbyist because I don't think he has that many friends. He'll probably just become a lawyer, chase, ambulance chaser.
And I love the fact that his new best friend is Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
They can go into oblivion together. He can take Debbie back to the mothership and then peel off his lizard thing and show his true alien face.
She runs around the state being his beard. That's going to do it for today's show. Are you surprised at the results from the midterm elections? Be sure to leave your comments in the comment section below. I'm John Phillips for Stephen Cruiser and Michelle Fields joining me here in Los Angeles. Thanks so much for watching The Rundown.